Hey, how's it going everyone? Today I'm going over my 170 gear builds. This video is going to be heavily inspired by Senor Spicy's most recent gear guide, just with some updated gear based on the Sinbad Part 3 update and packs that have come out since. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's get into it. Start off, we're going to be going over my Hybrid Buccaneer. And with my Hybrid Buccaneer, what I use for my helmet is I'm using the Corrupted Samurai's Hodoku. And what that is, it's just basically a boss drop for Mu Manchu. Mu Manchu has his 3 tiers of gear for every class. And for Buccaneer, if you get the tier 1 helmet, which is low 65 gear, it's absolutely amazing. It's probably the best Buccaneer hat in the game. It gives a Super Strike and a Vicious Charge, which is just incredibly useful. Super Strike allows you to start your Blade Storm chains really early on, and then the Vicious Charge is just good for stuff where you don't have range, and now you have a good charge. For your jacket, you're going to be wanting to use Baktoon's Garb. Baktoon's Garb is super useful. It just has a really good stat breakdown, and you get this from the Tribal Crew pack. If you don't own a Baktoon's Garb or you don't want to open packs, there are a few alternatives. Most notably, you could farm a Salty Robe. It's pretty similar to Baktoon's Garb, but you're losing some armor and you're losing some strength, which makes it less wanted. And not to mention, you actually have to go farm for that, and most people don't want to do salty. Alternatively, you could use a Mu Manchu 65 gear. You're losing some weapon power and you're losing some strength and armor, but it does give a vicious charge and a levy call, so it's good. But personally, I'm a really big fan of Baktoon's Garb. It's just I don't see myself needing a charge or a levy that often, and having that extra strength, armor, and weapon power really adds up for me. When it comes to my boots, I'm using Lord Trash's boots. These are the Bladestorm boots that were added in Sinbad Part 3, and they are incredibly useful because it allows most classes to get Bladestorm 2, and for Buccaneer you can get Blade 5 now without needing to use a Craven Blade, which is absolutely amazing. Not needing Craven Blade just opened the window for so many more builds that we weren't able to do prior to this being added. If you don't have Lord of Trash boots yet, what you can use is the Brogans of Lydier. You get these from Kane. Uh, Personally, I had a really hard time getting these, so I wouldn't recommend going out of your way for these because they're no longer the best boots in the game. But if you already have these and you're waiting to get Bladestorm boots because you haven't unlocked Sinbad Part 3 or anything like that, these are an amazing temporary option. And they really help out. With the AoE Triton's Chorus, it gives your entire team 25% resist to melee attacks, which might not sound too amazing, but it actually can prove pretty helpful for like companions that don't have amazing tankiness, and for stuff like any Musketeer companions where they're pretty much glass cannons, it really does just kind of buff them up a little bit. So it can help if you're doing something like, say, Blightbeard, where Blightbeard is pretty much all melees. It can help when you're doing a fight like that just to protect yourself. When it comes down to your weapon, there is a few options, but probably the best is going to be the Kraken's Breath set. What the Kraken's Breath does, which is absolutely amazing, it has some of the best weapon power, which means that out of any weapon that I've seen, it has the best weapon power, almost being 240 weapon power, which is absolutely huge. Plus, you get the copy of his spirits, and his spirits is just good to have an extra buff. So, debatably, you could not use Toro, and you could use this weapon instead, and then swap out Toro for a different companion. Personally, I still like to run Toro because with how my hands are typically, I never actually pull these spirits, and it's just always a good backup to run Toro even when having this, just to ensure that you're going to have these spirits go off. But having the spirits off this weapon is really nice as a bonus. When it comes down to your accessory, there's pretty much two main options, and it really comes down to the pet you're wearing. Preferably, I think the Sinbad stripes are better, and it's really heavily based on the pet, which is why not a ton of people are gonna be wearing this. So with Sinbad stripes, you're getting second chance. And a second chance, that's pretty great, because what second chance does is if you miss an attack, you will attack again because you missed. you can get second chance off your pet, which will give you second chance 2, which just basically helps out because that's 3 total activations of second chance. So if I equip this real quick, I can show you what that looks like. When you go down to your talents and you go all the way over to second chance, at second chance rank 2, it's going to make it so when you miss an attack, it can go off again. And you see that little X over there next to the little icon, it says X3. What that means, it means that for a total number of times, it can go off 3 times, which is really good because what people don't realize is with Patch of St. Fido, yes, it's really good for the accuracy and weapon power, but there's also some dodge on there. So if you can lower your dodge number a bit, it's actually pretty good because your Vengeance Strike will go off more often because now you're not dodging as much, you reduce your dodge. Works out pretty nice. Other benefit of that is it's a PvE eye patch, because I know not everyone wants to buy a patch of St. Fido with it being kind of expensive. You're spending over $5 on a piece of gear, so I can get people not wanting to buy that. So having this PvE option is pretty nice, and I think it's pretty desirable if you don't want to use patch of St. Fido, or if you have the pet coming in the works. So I would say farm up a Sinbad Stripe, hold on to it. If you already have Patch of St. Fido, I would use that in case you are working towards the build or anything like that. Patch of St. Fido is basically amazing if you don't have the pet. If you can make this niche pet, it's really good. When it comes down to your totem, you're going to be wanting to use the Ilios Quiver. Quiver is amazing. The other option would be Eyes of the Cobra, but personally I found that Ilios Quiver is a little bit nicer. Reason being, you're getting the accuracy and weapon power on it, versus Eyes of the Cobra, you're getting some health and magic resist, which isn't too great. So Eyes is more good in a pure build, but in hybrid it's not as needed because Ilios Quiver is really amazing. When it comes down to your charm, you're going to be using a strength-based medallion. Medallion is just basically a stat piece. It gives you a ton of really good stats, and with all these stats, you get the strength, you get the accuracy, you get the weapon power. It just ends up buffing your damage like crazy through the roof. And with high strength rating, your critical is higher as well. So it's a really good combination. For my ring, personally, I use the Granite Aztecosaur ring with Rouse on it. It gives you 5% weapon power, which at first glance, you're like, why would you be using that? That seems kind of bad. But the reality is, when I have that on, I'm actually getting an extra 13 weapon power with my weapon mastery. So it's basically taking my total weapon power off my weapon, and then just gives me 5% of that, which is really nice. And I think that's pretty good. Plus, you're getting a heal on that. So I think, honestly, it's one of my more enjoyable pieces of gear. If you don't have something you want to run, I think these weapon power stuff is pretty good. And I could see an argument for like maybe a ring like this, but you don't get the weapon power off the Brain Thief ring. And honestly, I would rather do more damage, and I don't need a second Super Strike because typically I'm gonna kill with just a single Super Strike, and I don't need the Levy Call. So having an extra 13 weapon power and a heal is more desirable to me. Alternatively, some people would run a Sinbad ring to get hold 4. Which is okay, but I don't like it too much when you consider the fact that, same problem, you're just getting a Valor Sport, not really needed too often. Hold the line, not great when it comes to hold 4. Reason being, if you go over to hold the line, you go to hold 4, it's buffing your dodge, and you don't want your dodge being up on a Buccaneer because you want to land Vengeance Strike. It makes it less desirable. Some people really like it, but personally, I would rather just have hold 3 for the dodge nerf, and then I can keep my Vengeance more likely to go off. So, I don't really recommend using. When it comes to pet, the pet's kind of neat. What I'm going to be saying is the best pet you can do for Buck is this pet over here. Now, it's a hypothetical because I don't have the pet made yet, but I would be running Double Tap, Second Chance, Blade Storm, Relent, and then for your powers, assuming you got all your powers, you'd be wanting to run Rally, Regroup, and Brutal Charge. Brutal Charge is for the bonus hit. The heals are pretty obvious. You're getting some extra heals. With Blade Storm, you can get Blade 5. Second Chance, you can get Second Chance 2. Relent, Relent 2, and then Double Tap. Alright, and then with all that, this is what the build is going to look like in terms of your talents. To start off, you're going to have Hold 3 for the 50% dodge nerf on 3 enemies, which is huge. The Vengeance 3 for the stun on 3 enemies, which is amazing. We love Vengeance 3 out here. It's one of my favorite abilities in the game. Relent and Burst 2, which are just bonus attacks that can go off. It just helps basically get your damage output higher. Your Blade 5 for the bonus 25 per activation and the critical boost. You could get Second Chance 2 with the pet. You have your double tap. It would be like right here if I had it. And then you have Turn 3, which is great. All that stuff, it just works out so well. And then when we look at our breakdown in terms of like just stats, we have 227 strength, which is great. We have 377 weapon power. We have 140 accuracy, 92 armor, 120 dodge, and it's not super high because we're not using the Patch St. Fido, which is pretty good. Your health is really good, and then that's pretty much what the build is going to look like. Alright, so now let's hop into the Pure Base Buck. Alright, so now for Pure Buck, it's a pretty fun build, and you don't really need anything too crazy with it. And what's really convenient too is this build, your gear is actually really similar to Hybrid. So, to start off, you're going to still be using the Corrupted Summarized Hadoku. It's great. I just went over why it's so good. Super Strike and Vicious, amazing. Blacktoon's Garb, again, it's just such a convenient piece of gear. Lord Trash Boots, they're amazing for the Blade Storm. I'm going to be using the Anchor Tanker. It's just the highest damaging weapon for Buccaneer that you can get. Plus, it gives the Spirits buff, which is huge. If you don't have an Anchor Tanker or you don't want to use an Anchor Tanker, there are some alternatives for Pure Smashy Slashy and Pure Buck. Most notably being the Supercharged Blade. It's in the Crown Shop. There's 2 different versions for look, but they're both identical when it comes to damage. Here's the first one, Furlius Flameburge. It's literally just like the look of it is like this. And then there's the Seasheller, and they're identical. There's no differences between the two. It's just basically like the look. This one's big choppy weapons, and this one isn't. So, to my understanding, if you had this, then you wouldn't need big choppy. But you would have Relentless trained regardless, so it doesn't matter which one you use. Alright, so that's where you get the Supercharge. That's a Crown Job weapon, so not a ton of people might want to buy it. If you don't want that, what's really going to be good is the Axe of the Minotaur Lords. You can get it as early as level 60 from Labyrinth, which is huge. Follow through is great. Follow through just basically makes it so when you hit an enemy, you'll hit a random enemy in your proximity. So it works like Blade Storm would go off, but you don't need the critical. So if you hit an enemy and then you start chaining them to death and then you proc Blade Storm, you can go kill another enemy. Works out great. Weapon power on it's pretty low comparatively to Anchor Tanker, which is the main reason I'm not going to be using it. But it's pretty good if you are just going through the game questing, you pick this up, it's fun. If you bought a Polaris bundle, you're having a good day. Because you can get the Revolutionary's Axe, which is really good damage. It's 256, which is the same damage of a Craven Blade, and it gives a Vicious Charge, which is just basically like this weapon is a just off-brand Supercharge. It's the only difference. It's like identical when it comes to damage, but it just doesn't have the super attached to it. So in terms of like just weapons, if you're going through the game, you don't have anything yet, Revolutionary Axe, it's great. If you don't want to use that, the Haywire weapons are actually really good. You can pick up a Haywire weapon for the Haywire Strike, and Haywire Strike just, it's a nice ability. I think it's pretty fun. There is the new Trolley weapon with Retaliation. I haven't tested it too much yet, and the weapon power seems kind of low. It's a pure smashy weapon, so I didn't feel as much like I wanted to use it, because there's not a ton of pure smashy weapons I like. Also, when you have slashy, you can train slashy weapons, which buffs your damage. So it's kind of a loss with that. But that was a bit of a downside. It was just these new Trolley weapons. Those are the weapons for Pure Buck. In terms of your like accessory, same thing. You're probably gonna want to run Sinbad stripes if you have the pet made. If you don't have the pet made, run Patches Saint Fido. It's just gonna come down to that. Totem eyes. You're using Eyes of the Cobra because you want first strike on your pet. If you get first strike on your pet, you have first strike 2. It's just amazing. It's so good because with first strike 2, what that does is just you can attack before someone else, and then if you land a first strike, your what is it called? Your Relentless can go off, your Blade Storm can go off. It's just pretty great. And then if you miss your first strike, then your second chance will go off to clutch up, and then your Relentless goes off, which is huge. Your charm, you're using a strength-based medallion. It's pretty obvious. It's just the strength, accuracy, and weapon power are great on it. It's a stat piece. So it's pretty self-explanatory to why you want that. Ring, Aztecosaur ring. It's just the weapon power on it is great to just boost your overall damage. And then the pet that I'd be recommending, I don't have it made yet, but I had a few failed pets that kind of look like it, is First Strike, Blade Storm, Relentless, Second Chance, and then you probably want to have 2 heals on it and like Brutal. When you get a pet like that, it's great because you're going to have Second Chance 2, you're going to have Blade 5, Relent 2, and then you're going to have First Strike 2. It's a really nice setup. So now when we get back into actually looking at our entire setup, let's jump over real quick. So we're going to have Hold 3, which is good because we don't want our dodge high. Venge 3. Venge 3 is great. It's amazing of an ability. We're going to have First Strike 2, which can go off 3 times. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it helps start up a chaining. So when you start chaining up really good, it's just good. Bonus damage is really the way I look at First Strike. Then we have our Relentless, our Blade Storm. You would have Second Chance 2 with the pet. And then you're going to have Turn 3, which is honestly a really good setup. Here's what the actual stats are looking like from build. I have 115 weapon power. That's amazing. Like, it's just pretty amazing. I love that. 130 accuracy without Patches Saint Fido. If you throw Patches Saint Fido on, then it's going to buff your weapon power a little bit and all that. So now I have 144 accuracy, a little bit more damage, dodge a little bit higher. Your armor, it's pretty good. Armor is just pretty solid with it. You're getting 92 armor. How I explained how your armor works a little bit ago was basically, say you take 100 damage, subtract 92, you're only taking 8 damage. It's decent in Pirate, but because it is flat resist, armor doesn't do a ton. But if you can get around 100 armor, it just increases your survivability by a fair chunk. Alright, but that's pretty much it for the Buccaneer. So now we're going to move on to Musketeer. Alright, let's hop into Musket. So there's 2 main builds for Musket that you're probably going to see pretty commonly. But the build I'm going to be using and going over first is going to be the Ready 5 build for Musket. So start off Ready 5, you're going to need a Feathers of Ickle. You need this basically just for the will on it. It's one of the just good items that gives will. Plus you get some weapon power on it. Really convenient. For your jacket, you're going to use Conqueror Outfit for the Ready spell. This is required for the build. You have to have this in order to get Ready 5. For boots, you're going to be using Tide boots. They're pretty great. There's nothing really as good as Tide. Alternatively, if you didn't have Tide boots, you could use Reinforced boots, which are basically just a pair of boots you could get from Claw in Sinbad Part 3 that will give you the heal Reinforced, which is an AoE heal. Also give some spell power. I'll show it a little bit later in the video, but I don't have a pair on my musket, so don't really worry about it too much for now. Tide boots are great, so if you have Tide boots, they help out a lot. Your weapon is going to be Orb Nefarious. For the double tap mainly, you can get double tap 5 with this build, which is really convenient because on top of having the knockback, you're getting some high damage. So the 2 of them stacked up, it actually works out really conveniently. For Patch, you're going to be using Patch of Saint Fido. It's great. Just having accuracy and weapon power, it means you're more likely to land your ready spell, which means that your knockback will pretty much go off, and that's what the really big priority is with Patch of Saint Fido, is just the accuracy. Totem, you're going to use Silver or Golden Trinket. I like the silver trinket a lot because you don't have the reaver on it, so it's just going to be the readied spell. You're going to be using a obsidian and brass medallion will based, which means that the primary stat is going to be will. You need this. It's a crucial part of the build basically because you need the will in order to get will primary in this. Because when you use tide boots, what ends up happening is I have 97 will and 96 agility. So if I didn't have the hat and the charm, I wouldn't be able to be will based. The really good thing about being will based is it allows you to be buffed by anyone's scratch in team combat. So if you have 4 scratches on the team, everyone's getting buffed by that scratch, which means that your bombs are basically doing about 2k damage by, like, say, the second turn, which is just great. And how you can determine what spell is based on spell power, what's based on weapon power, is this little symbol right here. So that's saying that spell power based, and you can hover over it to check. And then you also have this one, so your heals are spell power based, and then stuff like your trick shots are weapon power based. And because they're weapon power based, they're affected by either your agility, or because we're going to be will based, it'll be affected by your will. So if you have a will buff, it works out great. And you can get a will buff from a pet. It'll be a 75% will buff. I don't have it on my pet, but it's a really great thing to get on a readied pet. It just basically gives you some more utility on a musket, because if you're using tide turn 1 and say someone else isn't going to be using tide and they're on musket, they don't have a lot of options except for attacking for that first turn. So if you have will on your pet, works out really nice. Anyway, your ring is going to be Ring Hawkules for the big guns. It's great because you're getting accuracy on this ring, and the big guns is really helpful because what big guns is just going to do is there's no restrictions based on line of sight. And while yes, it does do a little bit less damage because there's no line of sight restrictions. So you're doing Mu Manchu, and Mu Manchu's hidden behind all the terracotta. You can just hit him with big guns and take care of Mu without having to move around, which works out really convenient. For the pet, you're going to be using a pet similar to this. My pet has a heal on it, which is really nice, but you want to have double tap, readied spell, and burst on the pet. Well, those are the most important things, because you want to have tap 5, you want to have readied 5, and you want to have burst 2 for the chain. Your 4th talent doesn't matter as much. I have Echo on mine. The really popular ones you'll see is Overwatch and Rising as well. The Overwatch is just so that you get the debuff off your Overwatch, which is minus 50 accuracy. Rising is just another chain, and Echo is another chain. Any of those work. None of them is really better than the other ones, so if you get any of those for your 4th talent, works out really great. But yeah, that's pretty much the raid spell character. Alright, then let's take a quick look at our powers. So our powers and talents we're going to be getting is going to be as follows for the hybrid build. We're going to have Overwatch 2. You could get 3 depending if you get on the pet. You have Elusive 3, Quick Draw 3, Burst 2, Double Tap 5, Readied 5, and Echo 1. The Echo can be substituted out for Rising or Overwatch, like I said a little bit earlier, but overall it's really, really good. And then when we look at our stat spread, we got a really nice stat spread too. We got 314 damage, 184 accuracy, no armor, 89 magic resist, 130 dodge, 286 spell power, and just over 3000 HP. So I think it's really nice. And let's move on. Alright, so let's hop into the pure musket build. For pure musket, there isn't really a ton of reasons to rock pure musket still, because Ready 5 is so busted, but if you didn't want to buy a Hoodoo bundle, or you didn't have one, you can still do some pretty good builds with pure musket. So the build I'm going to be showcasing mainly is going to be a Overwatch 5 build, which basically is identical to Readied, but you get knockback off your Overwatch instead of your Readied spell. And you are losing a few things that do make Ready pretty great for team combat, so that's why you don't really want to run pure musket anymore. It's just a little bit dated. But here's what my Overwatch 5 build is. So to start off, you need Santarana hat for the Overwatch. So the only reason to use this hat is you need it to get Overwatch 5. So you do Santarana hat for the Overwatch. For jacket, you're probably going to be using Captain Blood's jacket, just for the Blood Flames. This is a Miranda version, but there's also an Obsidian version. They're practically identical. Nothing like too crazy between the two, so you can use either or. When it gets down to your boots, Tide boots again, you could also use the reinforced boots I was talking about. You'll be seeing them when I get to the Privy and Witch Doctor section of the video, but Imperial boots and Fu Manchu, it's just great. If you have a pair, I really recommend using them. Your weapon is going to be a Darkmoor Death Splitter for the Overwatch and really high weapon power. This comes from the Ashes Armada pack, so you might not have it, and if you don't have it, there is a way still to get Overwatch 5, and it's with the Buck Blitzers, which you get from Buck Bronco and Cool Ranch. They're not as good. Pretty bad in comparison, I'll be honest. You're losing range and a lot of damage, so your chaining capability is really needed just to even kill an enemy. And then because you're losing range, they have to get a lot closer to you, which can be scary because, you know, you don't want them just in your face in case you do miss the Overwatch, and you might not kill them with chains, which is kind of bad. Alright, and then when we come down to your accessory, you're going to be using a Patch of St. Fido. It's really, really good. Stats are amazing on it. That's pretty much why. Your totem is pretty much a free option. You can use a lot of different totems with using Overwatch 5. You can use a Cane totem, you could use Ilios Quiver, you could use pretty much any totem you wanted. The Dutchman Spell Power totem from level 5 Dutchman is pretty good, just to have some bonus spell power. I have a Return Fire, Black Snake Quiver. It's really just any option for this. Because I don't really focus on Overwatch 5 too much, I don't have a ton of good stuff on this build. So this is what I'm running. It's just in case I dodge, I can still hit him with Return Fire, which is decent. For my charm, I'm going to be using a Agility Base Medallion. Simple reason why, I'm just trying to buff up my agility, and I get to keep my stats, which I would have had with my will-based medallion. So it's just, you're swapping out your will and agility, which is really nice. For your ring, you're going to be using Ring of Hercules, Big Guns Go Burr. Big Guns is amazing. Just having a source of like infinite range damage without line of sight restrictions is great in case there's like one enemy that's like has like a few hundred HP. Boom, Big Guns takes care of it. Pet. Sadly, because I don't use Overwatch, I don't have the pet fully made. I do have the pet pool made for the most part. It has double tap and burst fire on it. Overwatch manifested, but basically for the pet you'd want is you'd want a pet that would have Overwatch on it. You'd want a pet that has burst fire, so you get the burst fire off this, and then you would have double tap and pretty much any fourth talent you want. What you'll notice with most pets is your fourth talent is typically a bonus talent, and you can really mess around with that. So for your fourth talent, I would say you can use Quick Draw, which is great. If you can get Quick Draw on a pet, it's really, really nice. Because you can pair it pretty well with some different gear. Most notably, Obsidian Bill's jacket gives Quick Draw. So if you have that item, you could get Quick Draw 5 if it's on your pet, which is really, really nice, because Quick Draw 5, what that does is when you are about to be attacked, you'll pull out your gun and shoot them for 50% of your normal damage. So basically, it just is a nice bonus if you can get that. But yeah, you can use Quick Draw, True Grit, Return Fire if you want Return Fire 2, which is decent. I don't think it matters too much. Just any fourth talent on an Overwatch pet is pretty convenient. Alright, so now let's look at your stat breakdown. So what your stats are going to be for your breakdown in terms of your talents is as follows. You're going to have Burst Fire 2, assuming you have the pet made. You're going to have Elusive 3. You're going to have Quick Draw 3, Double Tap 3. You could get 4, depending if you had the pet. Return Fire or anything else. So if you use Cane, you'll have like True Grit and stuff like that. So that works out pretty well. And then the Overwatch 5. It's pretty great. So now if we look at your stats, stats are for the build is 101 agility, 317 weapon power, 192 accuracy, no armor, 51 magic resist, 124 dodge, 120, 186 spell power, and then you got okay health. You got about a little bit under 3k, so it's nothing too great, but that's the pure build for Musket. There's a ton of variations on Musket, I'll just be honest, but Overwatch 5 is great for PvE because having any type of knockback really helps out because it allows you to just like kind of be more defensive and then allows you to just focus on your buffing and dropping your bombs. So in team combat, you absolutely want to have knockback. In solo, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but these are probably the builds I'm going to say are the best for teams and solo. Alright, and now it's time to hop into the privy. So for the privateer, we are going to be running Ready 5. There are two builds for privy. Ready 5 is a little bit better. The other build is Repel 5, which most people know about. It's been a staple for a long time, but with Ready being an option in the game, Ready 5 is amazing on privy. So you can just train into Musket to like get your shooty weapons and all that, and then typically you already trained Staffy just to get spooky, and then you can get Ready 5 on privy really easily and get a ranged source of knockback, which works out great. Just having a knockback that isn't required for you to be next to the privy works out really well because you can actually protect your companions a lot better. Alright, so let's hop into it for what you're going to need for the build. Start off, you're going to want a salty hat with accuracy and will. This hat's really nice because you get the battle seal on it. Alternatively, if you get one of these, which is a little bit better than what I have, it's going to be the Dutchman Tempest hat. You get this from farming Obsidian Dutchman in the Monkeys to Skyway. You guys can use Tempest, which is a Musketeer bomb, and does more damage than big guns. It's really nice just to have that extra source of damage, but if you don't have that, you can use the Salty Hat, and it works out just as fine. You get the accuracy, which helps for your landing and readied, and having a second copy of Zeal is really, really convenient. For the robe, I'm going to be using Hoodoo Cornelius' robe, which is the Conqueror outfit. Get it from the Conqueror bundle, which is great. Here are the reinforcements I was talking about. These are called the Underworld's Warlord's boots. They give reinforce, accuracy, will, and some spell power. I want to get some health in there, but you know, who really cares? The reinforce is just a decent heal. It is spell power based, which means that your entire team gets buffed when you use scratch buffs, and then you get more heals. So on classes that don't have heals, like say Witch Doctor and Musketeer, if you are will based, getting a good heal like this helps out a lot when you're doing like a big fight. Like say Dutchman, if you have Underlord boots, they're more useful than Tide in Dutchman, so you really want to get a pair of those if you don't have them. For your weapon, there's two options for privy. You can use the Orb of Nefarious Death, which is really convenient because you get more chanting with it. Alternatively, on privy, you can actually use a thing called the Sinbad Mojo Shooter. You get this weapon from Sinbad Part 2. I don't have one, but what the weapon gives you is an ability called Albano's Mercy, which is the best heal in the game. It's a burst heal, which means that when it heals for one initial amount of health, and then it's going to heal over time for even more HP. So, assuming you get attacked the turn after you healed, now the end of that turn, you get a heal that goes off, which just kind of gives you more survivability. It's really good on privy, because on privy, your accuracy is pretty bad, so you're more likely to actually land like get more value out of a heal than landing a chain. So assuming you don't pop Zeal because you're buffing up and you're dropping big guns, you're just able to kind of like get something more useful if your team is low. For your accessory, you're going to be using Master Smuggler Cowl for the Mojo. It's really good. Or you can use Sinbad Stripes for the Valor's Rampart. Rampart is great. It's an AoE absorb, so it's like a heal, but because it's an absorb, you can put it up as a preemptive. So assuming you know you're about to get attacked, you put up a Rampart. Where this can be great is if you're doing Obsidian English Bill. You put a Valor's Rampart up at the end of turn 1. It protects you from Duck's cheat that he uses, where he just attacks everyone on the board. So it just gives you a little bit of bonus protection, and it's really useful depending on the fight. The Mojo is good if you're just doing something and you don't need the Rampart. so it's kind of helpful there. There's another patch that you can use, which is a patch that gives big guns. You can get it from farming Talos, and it's really nice. Just if you want extra big guns, you can use that patch. Personally, I don't really see the need. 3 big guns is enough for me when I'm playing. The Tempest, if you get the Tempest hat, you're really not going to need that eye patch, so I wouldn't even worry about that. But you could get 5 sources of bombs if you got like all those, so it is pretty good. For your totem, you're needed to use a Sinbad trinket, either gold or silver. On this character, I'm using a gold because I couldn't pull another silver one and I was too lazy to farm. So gold works really nice. For your charm, you're going to be using the right hand strand, which you get from Mu Manchu. This is the tier 1 version. For people who are wondering how to farm this, and if you're really struggling to pull something, if you go to Cabin Nefarious, which is the fight before Mu Manchu, it's 2 stages below him. But there's a group chest when you're heading up to the next floor to fight the Terracotta. You can cabin the dungeon and the chest will respawn every 2 minutes. So if you have 4 people that need this 65 gear, you can just farm that chest and it takes 2 minutes between and you don't have to do any combat. You can just farm up your gear really easily. Also get some doubloons from the doubloon chest. And that's an easy way to get all your gear before even farming. So if you want to do that before you start up your Mu runs, go knock out your gear real quick and then go farm Mu for the rest of your time. It's really smart. For your ring, you're going to be using Brain Thief Ring, which you get from doing the method I was telling you about, or you can get it from the Nefarious fight or Mu. It's used for the big guns. Same thing with the charm, the big guns. That's why you want it. For the pet, I'm using just any type of pet that gives a ready spell, because I don't have a perfect pet made for my privy yet, but I'd basically be running the same pet as my musket. So I'd want Burst Fire, Double Tap, Readied spell, and then the 4th is up to me. So I would want Overwatch because it's on my privateer. So that's just basically a good build for an overall breakdown. Let's look at stats we're going to get. So in terms of stats I'm getting, I would have Burst 2 once I make my pet. You're going to have your Double Tap 2, assuming you're running Orb Nefarious and your pet. If you're not, you'd have Double Tap 1 from your pet. Readied Spell 5 for my knockback. Overwatch 3 if you have it on your pet. Elusive 3, which is great. In terms of chains, don't got nearly as many as Musket, which is why Mojo Shooter is a lot more preferable. But that's going to be the Readied 5 build for Privy. So let's hop into Repel 5. Alright, so when you're doing Repel 5, it's pretty similar in terms of gear, which is really convenient for Privy. So to start off, you are still using a Salty hat, which you get from the Salty Weekly boss. It's the Coral Key. You can cabin that, but it's a half an hour cabin to start off with. So you can get that, and it's really useful for the accuracy and will. If you have Tempest hat from Dutchman, that's even better. So try to get that one if you don't have it yet. I'm still farming for one, but it's just been really unlucky. For your robe, you're going to be using a Captain Blood's jacket, Obsidian, or Miranda. Doesn't matter because the power is the same regardless. For boots, you're either using Tide boots or Underworld boots for the reinforce. If I had Tide boots, I'd be wearing them, but the heel works out really nice from these boots. Weapon, you're going to be using Captain Blood's Obsidian hook. You need this. It's just required for the build because you need the repel borders on it. Patch, you're using Smuggler Cowl or Sinbad Stripes. Both work out just well. I went over it just when it's going to a ready spell, so I'm not going to redress it. For your totem, you're either going to use Manticore Sting or the new Troggy Pack totem, which is way worse than Manticore, but it is an option in case you really wanted it. So that's something you can do for Repel. You're going to get the right hand stand or strand, and you're going to use Brain Thief for the big guns. When it comes to pet, only thing that matters is you need Repel on the pet. So my pet is only giving Repel and Relent because I gave up on the Relentless pet or Repel Borders pet, but you need Repel on the pet for the build. Perfect pet would be Repel, Blade, Relentless, and Riposte. Those work out really nice, just to kind of like give you some chains, but you don't really need it too much. So let's get into it. You're gonna have Riposte 1 from your weapon. You could get Riposte 2. If you train Relent, you can have Relent 2, which is pretty nice. And then you have Repel 5, which is your knockback. It's not great, and really what makes it just kind of lackluster is they have to stand right next to you in order to hit them with Repel borders. And when you spawn in during a fight, typically you have the whole grid layout where your companions spawn around you. So if a companion spawns in front of you, they're just going to get attacked, and your privy won't be attacked. And because you're going to be buffing or attacking every turn, there's no opportunity to move your privy up, and if you end up moving your privy, it's just kind of dumb, and it wastes time, and it's just not worth it. So Repel, it is a thing, but it's more of a legacy thing, because Ready 5 is so great. So let's hop into your stat spread real quick, and what your stat spread is actually pretty good too. 106 will, pretty good. Weapon power is low, just nothing you can really do about it. That's just what it is. Accuracy is okay. Spell power is pretty good. Dodge is your base dodge. Armor is from your hat. Magic resist is primarily from your jacket and from the Witch Doctor trainer. But that's what Repel 5 is for Privy. Alright, so let's hop over to the next class. Alright, time for Witch Doctor. I know no one's really happy, except for those few guys in the back who like Witch Doctor. But anyway, so let's hop into Witch. So, for Witch Doctor, it's really one of those lackluster class, I'll be honest. You can't really sugarcoat it too much. Even with the new Sinbad Part 3 gear, it still just hasn't really broke through since it got its nerf all the way back. Like, man, back almost like year 2 of the game. They just, Witch Doctor really struggles. But here's what their gear is. So you're gonna have the either Underworld Warlord's hat, which you get from Sinbad Part 3. The hats drop from any boss, which is pretty convenient, so that you know gotta form a specific one. But they drop from any Sinbad Part 3 boss, so you could get that. What's better than that is going to be the Tempest hat, and you get the Tempest hat from Dutchman, like I stated during the privy. It's really good just having that source of like big damage bombs, and those bombs have push on them is really good. There are a few other hats that you can get. You could use Conqueror hat, which is decent. It's not crazy good, but it's okay. I like the accuracy and spell power off the Underwarlord, so I like that hat a little bit more than Conk's hat, personally. You could use the Salty hat if you wanted. Salty hat it's basically Conqueror's hat, but you can have accuracy on it, which is pretty good. But for a hat, you're pretty much going to use Underwarlord hat, or you're going to use Tempest hat. For your jacket, Obsidian Blood jacket or Miranda jacket, you want the flames. That's really good. You could, if you wanted to, run Ready 5 on Witch. I don't recommend it too much for Ready 5 on Witch, and really the limiting factors for Witch Doctor is their accuracy just isn't great. It's about the same as Privy, but they don't have like as many chains unless they run Hybrid Witch Doctor, which is not good to run Hybrid Witch Doctor because you're losing your range from being pure. So you could run Ready 5 on Witch. It's decent, but I think you can do a little bit better with Blood. It is an option though. So if you want to run Ready 5, go all for it. Ready 5 is good on any class that can use it. So I'm personally using this, but Ready 5 is a slightly better build than what I'm going for Witch Doctor. So if you have it, go for it. For boots, I'm using reinforced boots. You could use tied boots alternatively. Either one of them are good. But that's what I recommend for the boots. For your weapon, you can use the Magic wand, which you get from Sinbad Part 3. Or you could use a Fool wand, or you could use a Mu Manchu 45 wand. out of the three, the Magic Wand is the best because it has the best weapon power. The downside, I won't lie, though, is even with good weapon power, you don't chain a ton on the Witch Doctor, so that doesn't really mean too much. So, if you really want to, Fool's Wand is still great, because getting Witch Hunter, it's based on your spell power, so Witch Hunter can just, like, one-shot a Witch. Like, if you get attacked by a Witch Doctor, you can just one-shot him with a Witch Hunter. And I think that's pretty good. So, I think the Fool's Wand actually turns out to be, like, still just that goated, because Witch Hunter is amazing. Even with having low damage, Witch Hunter is good. For your accessory, use Sinbad Stripes. People don't realize this, but the 10 spell power you get from Sinbad Stripes actually ends up being more than your Master Smuggler Cow for the Mojo Mastery. So, using this, 10 spell power is great. Plus, you get a Maelstrom, which is not amazing, but situational if you're soloing, so it can help out a lot. Totem, if you are running Ready 5, you'd be using a Sinbad Silver or Golden Trinket. If you're not doing that, then you can just use a Dutchman Mojo Mastery. You get this from level 5 Dutchman. You want a lot of Mojo on Witch, really, because you use an entirely power-based arsenal, because you're pretty much only using spells on Witch, so Mojo is just great for Witch. Same thing with your amulet. I recommend using the Shrimpy amulet for the Mojo. It's really, really good. Most people might think, well, why not use Moo Manchu? And it's simple. It's because the totem and the necklace don't actually give Mojo Bolt. Like, you get Mojo Storm here, and Mojo Storm is really nice. But from what I remember, the amulet doesn't give it, and the totem doesn't give it, and because those two don't, you don't really need it. Totem might, but I can't remember, and I'm too lazy to check. But I know the ring is good from this, so I am using the ring for the Mojo Storm. You could use all Mojo buffs, but I like having at least some extra Mojo Storm, so that's why I'm using the ring for Moo Manchu. And then the pet, I have a fail pet, haven't really tried too hard, but you would want, like, say, Rising, Witch Hunter, any other Witch talents, really, because like, pure Witch doesn't have a ton, but, like, you throw Elusive, whatever you want on the pet, throw some heals on there, and it's good. But that's what I recommend for Witch. I'll be honest, I'm going to be kind of shocked if there's, like, anyone even playing Witch, so you can kind of skip past this part in the video, because Witch Doctor just isn't that great. But in terms of Witch, that's like the build I recommend, or you can do the Ready 5 build. But yeah, let's move on to Swashbucklers. Alright, time for Swashbuckler. Probably one of the classes that fell off the most throughout the game. Swashbuckler is amazing early game, and I think everyone agrees with that statement. But end game, with how game design became post VA Part 2, Swashbuckler really struggles. So, yes, there are pretty good gear you can get for Swashbuckler, but their survivability is not great like it used to be. But let's hop into it. So for Swashbuckler, pretty much most people, I would assume, would know the build, but the build I'm going for is you're going to be using a Salty Hat. You can roll the stats on it. I think the accuracy is really important. Agility can be swapped out for weapon power, or you could just run agility. That's really good. You want to have a second Black Fog, because Black Fog is a team hide. So any companion you run, they're hidden. It's that simple. It's really good. In terms of your coat, I'm using the Midnight Shadow Shizoku, which you get from the Crown Shop. It is just a really good piece of gear. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Here we go. So this is what it is. It's from the Crown Shop, 3,500. It's basically a stat piece of gear. You'll find that, like, say, Buccaneer and Swash, they want good stat pieces just to boost up their damage output. And maybe boost their critical a tad bit. Nothing crazy, but stat pieces of gear are really useful on those classes. So this is a stat piece. For boots, you have two options. You have Lord Trash's boots for the Blade Storm, or you could use the Sky Spirit boots. I don't have a pair on me, but there's a pair of boots you can get from group chests and whatnot in, like, say, nightmare sewers and stuff like that, which basically just give you sky spirits. Pretty good. Blade Storm, you get, if you have it on your pet, you can get 2 levels of Blade Storm, which is really nice. If not, just use those boots for the sky spirit, and it's pretty nice. Weapons, you have a few options. So you can use Burn's Blade, which you get from Burn inside a Cool Ranch. He has his own Dreadnought. You can cabin that, which is pretty nice. And it gives you an Assassin Strike, which is really nice. I like his Swashbuckler set a bit more, because in use, I find that I don't crit a ton on Swash. So having his guaranteed super is pretty convenient. You could use the Burn Blade. Either one of these are great. So just whatever you end up finding you like the most, just rock it. There is the Sinbad Part 3 weapon. Some people really like it, but I'll point out a problem that most people don't realize. So how it works is after your initial hit, it puts you in a hide, but because of it working like that, you're going to either land Relentless or Blade Storm or something right after you hit, and then that breaks your hide. And because it breaks your hide, it leaves you just vulnerable, and it does less damage than an Assassin Strike, so it ends up just not really being worth it. And these other burn weapons are a lot better. For your eye patch, you have 2 options really. You have the Patch of St. Fido for the stats, which is great, or you could use a patch of Serpentine Assault. You can get this from a few bosses in Aquila, basically using it for the Sky Spirit, assuming you didn't have a patch of St. Fido, or if you didn't have the boots they give Sky Spirit, it works out. Personally, I'm just not using it because I like how my patch looks and I don't want to restitch to use this, so I'm being a cheapskate and still running patch of St. Fido. Moving on. For your totem, Prince of Ilia's Quiver, it's really good. I used this on my Buccaneer and Swash, and it's just because, yes, you can get Burst Fire on your pet, but there's not a ton of good totems in the game for Swash and Buck, so getting 10 accuracy and 7 weapon power ends up just being really nice. I have 2 of these myself, and I would say farm up at least 1 on your account just to have it in case you need it for, like, say, a musket or a melee build. It helps out a lot, and because it's not like a super difficult thing to pull, I recommend just trying to get at least 1 of them, just depending on if a build needs it. For your charm, you're going to want an agility medallion. Mine's on my Musketeer, and I'm way too lazy to transfer it, so I'm just using a extra will-based medallion I have. But if you have agility, agility works out really nice. It's just a little bit more, which means a little bit more damage and a little bit more critical. So it's pretty good. Or you could use a right-hand locket, which you get from the chest in the Nefarious Chamber, or you can get it from Mu Manchu or the Nefarious Fight. It's decent. It's, gives you a Walk in Darkness and 10 weapon power. It's pretty good. But yeah, let's move on to your ring. So for your ring, you're actually going to want to use the Brain Thief Circlet. So you get this from the chest method I was talking about, which is basically when you go into your cabin for Tower Mu and just farm the Nefarious 4x chest that you get before you walk up to the Terracotta floor. You can get the ring from here. And this ring's really good. It gives 10 weapon power and an Assassin Strike. You could use a weapon power ring. I use this on my Buccaneer, but I have an extra one for my Swash, but you want to have an Assassin Strike because you don't have a ton of hits on Swash that are like high damage. So having the Assassin Strike is really nice, which is pretty much the main reason to use this ring. So this ring is really important for the Assassin Strike, just so you have a high damage hit, because Swash really does struggle with chaining, which is why you are a hybrid Swash, is to hopefully chain more, but even then it is still kind of hard. For your pet, you're going to want to have Blade, Relent, and then you want to have, like, say, Double Tap. When you have that on the pet, you can have Elusive for your 4th talent, which is really, really nice, because what Elusive does is you get Elusive 3, which is boosting your dodge, and then the Double Tap goes off, which is also really good. So yeah, it's really good. My pet failed with selfish flanking, and I was so sad because it was almost a perfect pet. But that's kind of what your pet should look like. Let's look at our talent spread. So for your talents, what you're going to be having is you're going to have First Strike 3, which is good just to proc chains more often. You're going to have Repose 3, which is good for your dodge because you don't really want to be hit on Swash because you're kind of squishy. Relent 2, Burst 2, Blade 2, Elusive 3, because you want to get it on the pet, and then you would have Double Tap down there at the bottom for one bonus chain. But, Swash is okay. Do they struggle keeping up endgame? Yeah. Is their build pretty fun? It's pretty fun. But yeah, that's what I recommend for Swash. There isn't really a ton of builds for Swash. You could run Pure Stabby, but you just don't get chains if you run Pure Stabby. So I think Hybrid's probably the best build for them. But yeah, that's really what I recommend in terms of Swash. Alright, everyone. So now we're back where we started on the Buccaneer, but that's going to be my updated gear guide for level 70. Again, thank you guys just for kind of stopping by, and I know this was a really long video, and I haven't really done a ton of these on my channel before, so if you did enjoy it, leave a like, drop a sub on the channel. It really does help a lot with me knowing that this is content you want to see. This build was really inspired a lot by Senor Spicy's old builds that he made in his most recent gear guide. With Cinema Part 3 coming out, I figured it would be really nice to kind of update the community on what I've been personally using and what a lot of my friends have been using. It just kind of helps keep you guys up to date. I stream on Twitch a lot. I'm going to probably put my Twitch in the description or at the end card of the video. I have a Discord server too, so if you want to join the Discord, I'll have like ton of stuff in there, like guides and whatnot. If you have any questions, you can like shoot me a DM on Discord. It's an easy way to contact me. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna be my guide. So if you guys, enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. And yeah, I'm pretty tired, so I'm gonna go get some sleep because I'm torturing myself by playing pirate. Anyway, guys, have a good one.